A wealthy father thought no man was good enough for his daughter, especially a black doctor. But when fate turned his pride into weakness, the very man he rejected became the one holding his life in his hands. What happens next will leave you speechless. The evening sun poured golden light through the wide glass windows of the wealthy man's estate. The mansion stood tall, a symbol of power, money, and influence, decorated with polished marble floors, glistening chandeliers, and furniture imported from faraway lands. To the wealthy businessman who lived there, appearances were everything. Inside the grand living room, the daughter of the house sat nervously on the edge of a leather sofa. Her hands twisted together, her heart racing. She had been waiting for this moment for weeks. She knew what she wanted in her life, who she wanted to share it with, and she hoped, no, she prayed, that her father would give his blessing. The doorbell rang. The butler entered and announced politely, "Dr. Williams has arrived, sir." The wealthy man looked up from his leather chair, his eyebrows lifting slightly. He muttered under his breath, not impressed. "A doctor? HM? We'll see." The daughter jumped to her feet, her eyes lighting up as she hurried to greet him. Standing tall in the doorway was a black man in his early 30s, dressed neatly in a navy blue suit. His presence radiated confidence, but not arrogance. His posture carried dignity, the kind that came from years of hard work and sacrifice. His smile was calm, respectful, and warm. He stepped forward and extended his hand. "Good evening, sir. Thank you for seeing me." The wealthy man gave him only a half-hearted shake, his eyes already scanning him as though he were a number on a financial sheet, not a human being. "Sit," he ordered coldly. The doctor nodded, moving with quiet grace. He sat across from the father, while the daughter stood close by, her eyes filled with hope. After a brief silence, the doctor spoke, his voice steady. "Sir, I'll be direct. I love your daughter deeply, and she loves me. I came here tonight to ask for your blessing and your permission to marry her." The daughter's breath caught. Her eyes glistened with emotion as she reached out, squeezing her father's arm gently, silently begging him to listen. The wealthy man leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable at first. He tapped his fingers against the armrest, studying the doctor as if evaluating an investment. Finally, he spoke, his tone sharp and dismissive. "My daughter is the heir to my estate. She comes from a family of wealth, tradition, and standing. And you may be a doctor, but that doesn't make you worthy of her." The daughter gasped. "Father," she cried, "that's unfair." But the man silenced her with a wave of his hand. His eyes never left the doctor. "Tell me, son, do you really believe that saving lives makes you equal to me? Do you think a man from your background, your kind, belongs in this family? No, my daughter deserves better. She deserves someone of her own class, her own status." The room grew heavy. The daughter's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. "Father, please." But the doctor raised his hand gently, stopping her. His composure was unshaken. He looked the wealthy man directly in the eye. "Sir," he said firmly, yet respectfully, "I may not have been born into wealth, but I have dedicated my life to serving others. I have worked tirelessly to earn the title of doctor, and with that comes responsibility, compassion, and honor. I love your daughter, not for what she has, but for who she is. And I came here because I believe in doing things with respect. That is why I sought your blessing." The wealthy man's jaw tightened. His face hardened. "Respect," he snapped. "You think you show me respect by asking for what you cannot have. My answer is no. You will never marry my daughter, not while I draw breath." The words struck like a knife. The daughter broke into tears, reaching for her father. "How can you say that? You don't even know him." But the wealthy man stood, his voice rising. "I don't need to know him. I know enough. He is not worthy of this family. The doctor remained seated, his calmness an unshaken shield against the storm of arrogance before him. He rose slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. His eyes, steady and composed, met the father's without a flicker of anger. "Very well, sir," he said quietly. "I understand your answer. But I promise you this. The day will come when you will see me not as you do now, but for who I truly am." He turned to the daughter, offering her a reassuring smile, a silent promise that this was not the end. Then, with dignity, he walked out of the mansion, leaving behind silence, so heavy it weighed on everyone in the room. The wealthy man exhaled sharply, believing he had protected his family's pride. But deep down, a faint unease stirred in his chest, though he quickly dismissed it. Little did he know, the man he had just refused would soon hold his very life in his hands. The heavy doors of the mansion shut behind the doctor with a soft thud, and silence filled the lavish living room. The daughter stood frozen, her heart aching as she watched the man she loved walk away with quiet dignity. She wanted to run after him, to hold his hand, to tell him that her father's words didn't matter. But before she could move, her father's stern voice echoed across the room. "You will forget him," the wealthy man declared, his tone sharp and final. "That man will never be your husband." The daughter turned on him, her eyes blazing with tears and anger. "Why, father, why can't you see who he is? He is kind, he is intelligent. He saves lives every single day. He loves me, and I love him. Isn't that enough?" But the wealthy man only scoffed, his lips curling into a disdainful smirk. He rose from his chair, his tall frame casting a shadow across the room. "Enough! Love does not buy security. Love does not maintain wealth. Love does not uphold family legacy. You are my only child, the heir to everything I have built, and I will not have you throw it all away on a man who does not belong in our world." Her voice trembled, but she stood her ground. "Father, you are wrong. He belongs because of his heart, not his bank account. He is a doctor, respected, accomplished. What more could you want?" The wealthy man's eyes hardened. "I want a man of status, a man of our class, someone who understands power, not one who pretends at it with his stethoscope and his hospital coat. I didn't spend a lifetime building this empire so that my daughter could marry beneath her." The words cut deep. The daughter gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands. "Beneath me?" she whispered, disbelief shaking her voice. "You think he is beneath me because of his skin, because of his background? Father, do you hear yourself?" The man's face twisted, his pride refusing to yield. "I hear myself clearly, and you will hear me too. You are my daughter, and you will obey me. End this foolishness, or you will no longer be welcome in this house." Tears streamed down her face as she took a step back, her heart pounding. "So you would rather see me unhappy, trapped in a marriage built on money, than allow me to marry the man I truly love? That is not love, father. That is control." But her words bounced off his pride like rain against stone. The wealthy man's voice grew colder. "Control? No, my child. It is protection. You do not see the world as it is. People like him, men who claw their way up from nothing, always want more. Today it is you. Tomorrow it will be my wealth, my estate, my legacy, and I will not let that happen." The daughter's sobs broke the silence. She covered her face, sinking into the sofa, her shoulders trembling. Her heart longed to run after the doctor, to tell him that she would choose him over all the wealth in the world. But her father's words trapped her in fear, torn between her love and her family. The wealthy man turned away, walking back to his chair as though he had won a great battle. He picked up his glass of wine and sipped it slowly, his pride swelling in his chest. "You'll thank me one day," he muttered. "One day you'll see I was right." But even as he spoke, a faint unease crept into his heart. He replayed the doctor's final words. "The day will come when you will see me not as you do now, but for who I truly am." There had been no anger in his tone, no threat, only certainty. The wealthy man pushed the thought aside, convincing himself it meant nothing. His daughter, however, clung to those words with desperate hope. Deep in her soul, she knew the man she loved would not be broken by her father's cruelty. She knew the truth about his strength, his compassion, his honor. And she believed that one day her father would see it too. That night, the mansion was filled with silence, but it was not peace. It was the silence of broken hearts and arrogance too blind to see its own downfall. And the wealthy man, though he would never admit it, had just set into motion the very regret that would soon come crashing into his life. Days passed, and the mansion that once echoed with pride and authority began to feel strangely quiet. The wealthy man carried on with his business, ignoring his daughter's silent grief, convincing himself that he had done the right thing. But beneath his proud exterior, something was changing, something he could not control. At first, it was small. Fatigue after short walks. A tightness in his chest he dismissed as stress. A dizzy spell he brushed aside with a sip of water. But soon, the symptoms grew harder to ignore. The proud man who once boasted of strength now found himself gasping for air climbing his own staircase. His skin grew pale, his hands trembling. Still, he refused to admit weakness. To him, showing weakness was worse than admitting guilt. One evening, as he prepared for a dinner with business partners, his body betrayed him. He clutched his chest and collapsed onto the marble floor of his grand hallway. His daughter screamed his name as servants rushed to his side. For the first time, fear washed over the wealthy man's face, not fear of losing money or power, but fear of losing his life. Within minutes, an ambulance's sirens pierced the night. Paramedics lifted him onto a stretcher, their voices urgent, their movements swift. The daughter held his hand tightly, tears streaking her face. "Please, Father, hold on. Please." The ambulance doors closed, and the wealthy man was rushed to the hospital. Machines beeped, nurses hurried, and doctors gathered. But when his eyes fluttered open on the operating table, his breath shallow, his vision blurred, he saw a face that struck him like lightning. Standing above him in surgical scrubs, mask pulled down just far enough to reveal his calm, steady expression, was the very man he had once refused, Dr. Williams. The wealthy man's heart clenched, not just from illness, but from the weight of realization. The man he had mocked, belittled, and rejected now held his very life in his hands. The doctor's eyes met his, not with arrogance, but with quiet determination. "You're in safe hands, sir," he said firmly. "We'll take care of you." The wealthy man wanted to speak, to apologize, to beg, but no words came. The oxygen mask pressed against his face muffled every sound. His eyes widened in both shock and shame as the surgical lights above blinded him. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the one man he had sworn was not good enough. Hours passed in the sterile glow of the operating room. Nurses moved swiftly, tools clinked against metal trays, and the steady rhythm of heart monitors filled the air. Through it all, Dr. Williams worked with precision, skill, and compassion. His hands never trembled, his focus never broke. To him, the man on the table was not an enemy, not a man of arrogance, not even the father who had insulted him. He was a patient, a life worth saving. Finally, the procedure ended. The doctor stepped back, his forehead damp with sweat, his heart steady. The wealthy man's pulse had stabilized, his breathing even, his life spared. Later, in the quiet of the recovery room, the wealthy man opened his eyes slowly. His chest ached, but the sound of the monitor's steady beeps reminded him that he was alive. He turned his head and saw his daughter asleep in a chair beside him, her hand still wrapped around his. And then, just beyond her, he saw Dr. Williams enter the room, his white coat flowing behind him, his face calm but resolute. Their eyes met, and the weight of unspoken words filled the silence. Dr. Williams stepped closer, his voice quiet but firm. "You're recovering well, sir. The surgery was a success." The wealthy man's lips quivered. His voice was weak, but his shame was strong. You saved me," he whispered, his eyes glistening. The doctor nodded once. "It's my duty. I took an oath to save lives, no matter who they are, even those who see me as less." The wealthy man's heart sank deeper than it ever had before. His arrogance, his pride, his prejudice, all of it felt small, foolish, meaningless. This man, the one he had rejected for his daughter, had chosen compassion over vengeance. And in that moment, the wealthy man realized how wrong he had been. The truth had unfolded. The man he thought beneath, his family, had just proven to be greater than him in every way that mattered. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled the recovery room, a rhythmic reminder that life was still flowing in the veins of the once proud man. Sunlight poured faintly through the hospital blinds, softening the cold sterility of the space. The wealthy man lay propped up in bed, his chest bandaged, his strength not yet returned. Every breath was slower now, each one a reminder of how fragile he truly was. Beside him, his daughter sat quietly, her eyes red from sleepless nights and worry. She clutched his hand tightly, silently grateful that he was alive. Her love for him had not diminished, but her disappointment still weighed heavy. She knew he had been wrong, terribly wrong. The door opened, and in walked Dr. Williams. His white coat seemed to carry the authority of both knowledge and compassion. He held a clipboard in one hand, but his presence alone commanded the room. The daughter stood immediately, offering him a grateful smile. "Doctor," she whispered, "thank you. You saved him." Dr. Williams gave her a small nod. "It was my duty, and I'm glad he's recovering." The wealthy man shifted, his voice hoarse, but laced with humility that had never touched it before. "Doctor," his lips trembled. "I don't know what to say." The doctor stepped closer, setting the clipboard aside. He stood at the foot of the bed, his posture calm but firm, his eyes steady. "You don't need to say much, sir. The truth speaks louder than any apology." The wealthy man's throat tightened. Shame burned in his chest more than the pain of the surgery. "I judged you," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I judged you for the color of your skin, for your background, and I treated you as though you were less than my family. Yet when my life was in your hands, you chose to save me." The doctor's gaze did not waver. His words were calm, but they carried the weight of wisdom. "Because I am a doctor. When I took my oath, I swore that every life has value. I don't get to decide whose life is worth saving. My duty is to heal, not to hate." The wealthy man's eyes glistened. "I was wrong," he whispered. "So very wrong." The doctor folded his hands, his voice deep and steady. "Wrong doesn't even begin to cover it, sir. You looked at me and saw only what you wanted to see. Not a man, not a doctor, not someone who loves your daughter, but a threat to your pride, to your wealth, to your false sense of superiority. You thought money made you powerful, but money could not save you. Your power failed you the moment you collapsed in your own house. And in that moment, the life you mocked became the life you depended on." The wealthy man's chest heaved, his heart heavy with regret. He had never felt so small. Dr. Williams stepped closer, his voice softening but not losing its firmness. "Let me tell you what true power is. True power is compassion when you have every reason to be bitter. True power is saving the life of the man who once spat on your dignity. True power is respect, earned, not demanded. The words hung in the room, each one striking the wealthy man's pride until it shattered completely. He lowered his gaze, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said, voice breaking. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Dr. Williams let the silence linger before answering. "Perhaps not, but forgiveness is not about what we deserve. It's about what we choose to give. I chose to give you life, sir. What you do with it from here is your choice." The daughter squeezed her father's hand, her tears flowing freely. For the first time, she saw humility in his eyes, a humility she had prayed for. The wealthy man turned to his daughter, his voice trembling. "I was blind. I was cruel. And I hurt you. I thought I was protecting you, but I was only protecting my pride. I see now that I was wrong." He turned back to Dr. Williams, his eyes red with shame. "And you, doctor, I owe you more than my life. I owe you the truth. You are far greater a man than I ever gave you credit for." The doctor gave a small nod, his expression unreadable but calm. "Then let this be the lesson you carry forward. Wealth fades, status crumbles, pride destroys. But respect lasts. Remember that." The wealthy man closed his eyes, tears rolling down his cheeks. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of his arrogance collapse entirely, leaving only regret and the hope of redemption. The wealthy man sat upright in his hospital bed, his once proud shoulders slouched under the weight of guilt. The steady rhythm of the heart monitor echoed in the room, a reminder that his life had been spared, but also that it no longer belonged only to himself. His daughter sat close by, her hand wrapped around his, her eyes full of both love and disappointment. Dr. Williams remained standing near the foot of the bed, calm and dignified, his presence as commanding as any king in his palace. He had spoken his truth, delivered the lesson that pierced deeper than any scalpel. Now, the wealthy man was left to confront his shame. For a long moment, silence filled the room. The wealthy man's lips quivered, his voice finally breaking through the heaviness. "Doctor, I don't know how to make this right." The doctor shook his head gently. "It isn't about making it right. What's done is done. It's about who you choose to be from this moment forward." The words settled deep in the old man's heart. He thought of all the years he had spent building his fortune, protecting his image, guarding his family's name as though it were more precious than their happiness. And yet, in his greatest moment of weakness, it was not money, not power, not influence that had saved him. It was the very man he had belittled. Tears welled in his eyes, spilling freely down his cheeks. He reached out a trembling hand toward Dr. Williams. I ask for your forgiveness, not just for my words to you, but for the pain I caused my daughter. I was blinded by my own pride, and it nearly cost me everything that matters." Dr. Williams looked at him for a long moment. Then, with quiet grace, he stepped forward and shook the old man's hand. "I don't hold hatred in my heart, sir," he said softly. "I chose compassion over bitterness. And if this moment changes you, then it was worth it." The daughter's tears flowed as she rose to her feet, wrapping her arms around her father. "Oh, Father," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's all I ever wanted, for you to see him the way I do." The wealthy man clung to her, his tears soaking into her hair. "I see it now," he said. "I see him for who he truly is, and I see the fool I have been." He turned his gaze back to Dr. Williams, his voice unsteady but sincere. "If you will still have her, you have my blessing. More than that, you have my respect." For the first time since the painful rejection, a soft smile crossed Dr. Williams' face. His eyes met the daughter's, and in that moment, love and hope filled the room brighter than any sunlight. The wealthy man leaned back against his pillows, exhausted but lighter, as though a great weight had finally lifted. His pride had crumbled, replaced by humility. His prejudice had been burned away, replaced by respect. He had lost the battle to protect his legacy, but in doing so, he had won something far greater, the chance to make amends, to restore love where arrogance once stood. Weeks later, when he had recovered, the wealthy man sat in the front row of a small church, tears in his eyes as he watched his daughter walk down the aisle. Dr. Williams stood waiting at the altar, his posture tall and proud, not because of wealth or status, but because of the strength of his character. As the vows were spoken, the wealthy man bowed his head, whispering a prayer of gratitude, not for riches, not for power, but for the lesson that had humbled him and given him back his family. And so, the story that began with arrogance ended with redemption. A man once blinded by wealth learned that the greatest treasure of all was not money, but love, respect, and character. The wealthy man would carry his regret forever, but he would also carry the lesson. And in the end, it left him not broken, but renewed.